Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to draw a fox using coloured pencils. In this piece I'm using Odourless Solvent to blend, and the pencils I'm using are Polychromos by Faber-Castell and Luminance pencils. I've started by putting down light layers of the pencil in the background, and I've blended it out with the solvent. And I've made sure that I've got about 5 light layers of pencil before I do any blending. And then I have to wait for that solvent to dry before I start going over with additional layers. And make sure that you are pressing lightly with the pencil. You don't want to be pressing hard so that it's putting too much pressure and pushing the tooth of the paper down and flattening it out. To be able to do lots and lots of layers, you need to be pressing very lightly with the pencil. And you build up the pigment on the paper by putting lots of layers down as opposed to pressing hard. And then with the solvent, make sure you don't have too much on the brush. If you saturate the paper, it smears the pigment around too much sometimes. And also you have to wait for longer for the paper to dry as well before you can go over it. It's more important on later layers to not use too much solvent, because later on it will just smear and make brush marks with the paintbrush that you're using, and this can remove the smooth look that you are going for. In things like the background, using a lot of solvent like that can be useful, and you'll see later on I actually use the paintbrush to smear the pigment around a bit to sort of make the background look really blurry. I do go back over the background further later on. I just wanted to get a nice layer across most of the page before I decided where it needed more work and what colours I was going to use as well, because I want to darken it up a lot more and add in sort of little fairy lights or sparkles. I changed what I wanted to do from the initial photo that I'm working on, just had the grass in the background, and I wanted to make it look a bit more interesting than just what the reference photo had. And now I've started on the fox itself, and when drawing fur, there are a few things to remember. Keep your pencil sharp, because you want to do little tiny strokes. You don't want thick pencil strokes, because that won't look like fur. It won't look like the fine hairs. The other thing is to pay attention to your reference photo and watch where the fur, what direction the fur is going in. You're not just doing strokes all over the place. You need to pay attention to which way the fur is going, because it changes direction all over the place, especially that area around the ear that I've just been working on. You see how the fur is going in all different directions, but you have to pay attention to how it is on the reference photo. The other thing also to bear in mind is to keep your pencil strokes in line with how long the fur is. So if you've got long fur, you do longer sweeping strokes and make them a little bit curved. If it's short fur, especially around the muzzle area, you want short strokes. You get that effect of the fur by varying the pencil strokes. For this piece, I'm working on Stonehenge white paper, and I bought it in a pad. And I haven't used this paper before, so I was quite interested to see how it compared to my usual Arches watercolor paper. And one thing I did notice is that it does not take layers nearly as well as the Arches water paper. The other thing I noticed was that it wasn't as absorbent with the Odourless Solvent. So usually with the Arches water paper, I can put a fair amount on the brush and I don't need to gloss it too much before using it on the paper. With this paper, I found that I had to be a lot more careful with how much was on the brush. I had to make sure that I was using paper towel to wipe the brush a little bit before using it on the paper. Otherwise, I ended up with way too much solvent on the brush and it smeared it a lot more. And that's more important in the later layers where you've got to be careful with how much solvent you've got on the brush rather than the initial layers. But yes, it was something I found quite interesting in difference between the two different papers that I use. Arches is my go-to paper, so I was wanting to try something a little bit different and see how it compared. So I thought I'd try Stonehenge. I'm definitely curious to see how it goes with other pieces. It's just got to bear in mind that this particular paper, you need hardly any solvent at all on the brush. You can almost do it with a almost dry brush, pretty much. It does not take much. And that's something to bear in mind if you are using different papers to the ones you're seeing in videos, is that things like solvent do behave differently. So if you're having issues with it, it may potentially be the paper that you're working on rather than your techniques. So do bear that in mind. Try different papers and see which one works for you. Just before I went over the fur using a white luminance pencil to get those white highlights in. Bear in mind when you are using pencil, it is harder to go over with a white pencil to get it back to white. You can't do that. You can use the brush and powder titanium white mixed with a little bit of their touch-up texture. But when using white, you want to make sure that if you've got a section which is really white fur, you need to leave that white initially. You can't put other colours down first. You have to really watch that because it's hard to get it back to white. I do find with white fur that I can go over it and get those shadows in and then bring out a few of the lighter furs using the luminance pencil though. You just got to make sure it's really sharp to get a good point on it. And then that helps to make that more opaque. I'm just getting in the grass around the tail and trying to get the shadows in nicely to show off that grass, because I want it to be dark, but it also has the grass standing out against those shadows. And adding in some yellow onto the grass as well to make it a bit more yellow than what it was. And now I'm starting to figure out what I'm doing with the background, because before I got the base colour down, but I didn't really have a clear idea what I wanted to do with the background. So now I'm starting to build it up in more details, put in a few little grass heads, but not wanting to do too much detail in the background because I want it to be a blurry, out of focus background. I want the focus on the fox, not on the grass too much. Now for this section, what I've got is the titanium white powder from brush and pencil, and it's mixed with a little bit of their touch-up texture. And I've mixed it into a paste, and then I was just simply painting it on with a liner brush. And it's good to put little highlights on because you can bring that white back into the artwork, which you can't do as well with just the pencil on its own. Just blending out the additional details in the background, or not details, the colour I added. Now I'm adding in some little white spots with the titanium white, using a little applicator to put it on. I'm trying to add little lights in, and then going over those in yellow, and just trying to, so they're not so stark white, and then painting in some little butterflies. Now I wasn't entirely sure where I was going with this. I was just adding them in and seeing what I could do. I do alter them a little bit. When the camera was off, I went over them and changed them a little bit to make them how I had envisioned them in my mind. As always with any artwork, once I've finished it, I put it aside on the table for a few days and keep looking at it, and then I go back and I adjust the details. Sometimes you just need to step back for a day or two and then work on it a bit more to add in extra details where you think that it's needed. And sometimes when you think something's finished, it may not be completely finished. It just might need that little bit more tweaking to make it that perfect piece that you wanted. And there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.